Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 211 based on novel. So let's start. Li Yuan looked at Wang Lin and felt doubt in his heart. If this person had already understood the entire situation, why was he still so confident? There was something strange about this. After letting out a cold snort, Li Yuan didn't waste any time and stepped out. His right hand formed a seal. In a flash, a restriction suddenly appeared. This restriction was unpredictable and suddenly split into 18 restrictions. However, these 18 restrictions showed signs of collapse, as if they were extremely difficult to handle. However, this sign of collapse was extremely well hidden and difficult to notice. The 18 illusory statues suddenly took physical form due to the restrictions around Li Yuan. The 18 statues shot toward Wang Lin like 18 celestial gods. These 18 celestial statues gave off bursts of restriction light. In an instant, they surrounded Wang Lin. This is the real 18-plum restriction. Look closely. Li Yuan's eyes became cold and his right hand pointed at the air. Wang Lin leisurely and casually said, "To kill the blood of your own master, such a person is without shame and conscience." Li Yuan, when you sacrificed the blood of your master's descendant, did you not feel the sadness from your master's statue? Do you dare to turn around and look at the seal on your master's right hand? Don't try to break my faith. Everything I do is to revive my lord, it is not something a mere child like you can understand. Li Yuan's eyes were gloomy. Wang Lin had now confirmed his own guess. That Ji Hong was the descendant of the Celestial in the stone carving. Back then, Li Yuan's ancestor came with the ancestor of the Ji family. For some unknown reason, Li Yuan's ancestor died and the treasures were taken by the Ji family ancestor. However, Wang Lin was still confused about something. However, at the moment Li Yuan recognized the Celestial Guard and named the stop spell, Wang Lin was suddenly enlightened and understood everything. You don't even remember who you are? You are not Li Yuan. Wang Lin's voice was filled with mystery. As he spoke, the 18 celestial statues rushed toward him. Wang Lin slapped his bag of holding and a mountain stone appeared in his hand. The stone immediately grew until it was the size of a small mountain and gave off an ancient aura. Wang Lin's hand slapped the mountain, causing the mountain soul to appear and expand. Wang Lin stood inside the ring, his eyes shining brightly. Li Yuan is a descendant of the Li family. He spent his life trying to release his family from the slave imprint. However, you are doing the opposite. Not only are you not trying to release the slave imprint, you are using the soul of all those slave imprints as sacrifices to revive your master. The key to all of this is the blood of the descendant, to use the blood as an offering to awaken the dormant soul sealed inside. Who the hell are you? Li Yuan's eyes became cold. His hand formed a seal and pointed at Wang Lin. The 18 celestial statues trembled and turned into 18 plum blossoms that rotated rapidly around Wang Lin. It created a vortex with Wang Lin at the center. The vortex gave off a terrifying aura. Wang Lin's expression was calm without any sign of hesitation. His hand formed a seal and a restriction immediately appeared. This restriction flickered and divided into 18 as well, but 6 of them were still only illusions. With a flick, the 18 restrictions flew out toward the 18 plum blossoms, causing the 18 plum blossoms to pause. At the same time, Wang Lin slapped his bag of holding and the celestial sword appeared in his hand. Holding the celestial sword, Wang Lin's eyes became cold and he slashed down. Heavenly chop! When the sword fell, the surroundings seemed to freeze, waiting for the sword to descend. Bang bang bang. Among the 18 plum blossoms, 3 of them immediately collapsed. Wang Lin took a step and walked out of the vortex formed by the 18 plum blossoms. You are the soul of the servant of the Celestial. As the slave imprint was engraved into the Li family, they became slaves to the Celestial and followed your commands. Not only are you not Li Yuan, even the Li ancestor from tens of thousands of years ago that collected the 3 treasures was not himself. It was you who merged together with the slave imprint and reincarnated into the Li family. Wang Lin's eyes shined as he stepped out and spoke with resolve in his voice. Wang Lin's eyes shined brightly as he coldly said, "That is why tens of thousands of years ago, when you first reincarnated, you were able to make the GE family comply. Today, after tens of thousands of years in your second reincarnation, you are still able to make the GE family comply. This is because you are driven by a sense of self-righteousness that you must revive your master even at the expense of the entire GE family. You can cheat others, but you can't cheat me. As long as it is related to reincarnation cycle, there is nothing I can't see through." Li Yuan silently pondered. When he heard Wang Lin's words, the ripple caused a trace of resistance to suddenly appear in his heart. Li Yuan's face revealed a sign of struggle. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed. He had been waiting for this moment. At this moment, the mountain soul condensed into a ball of fog and was thrown at the stone statue. At the same time, Wang Lin pointed at the sky and with a thought, the shadow of a whip appeared. The karma whip appeared with a series of snapping sounds. The moment it appeared, Wang Lin grabbed the whip, stepped forward, and mercilessly swung the whip. Bang! This whip was too fast. What it hit wasn't the flesh or the origin soul, but the karmic cause and effect. When the whip landed on the struggling Li Yuan, his body trembled and he quickly retreated. Even the flesh urine rejects you. Because your soul is not of the Li family. Wang Lin let out another roar and his eyes released a mysterious light. He then took out another step and pointed at Li Yuan. "Stop spell." Li Yuan's retreating body suddenly paused and the karma whip whipped him once more. There was a crisp snap as the whip landed, causing Li Yuan's body to tremble once more. The struggle on his face became ferocious. Wang Lin was about to continue, but he suddenly stopped because the struggle on Li Yuan's face suddenly disappeared without a trace. Li Yuan's body quickly retreated and rushed ahead of the mountain soul. A restriction appeared in his hand and he pressed it down on the mountain soul. He then looked at Wang Lin and slowly said, "I'm not wrong." As if responding to Li Yuan's words, the collapse of the stone statue became even more intense. All the resentment and white light inside the red flame was absorbed by the stone statue. Even the red flame began to shrink as if it would eventually be absorbed by the statue as well. "I'll allow my master's spirit to break free and enter the reincarnation cycle. I'm not wrong. Not wrong. Even if all of master's descendants die, I'm still not wrong." Li Yuan's voice became more calm. As he stared at Wang Lin, his right hand lifted from between his eyebrows and a black line appeared from his hand. This black line was exactly the same as the one that trapped the celestial guard. However, the moment it appeared, it showed signs of collapse, as if it wasn't complete. Wang Lin noticed this and remained calm. Those two hits with the whip had opened a hole in Li Yuan's mind. This person was indeed as he had speculated, only the remnant soul left inside the slave imprint. Although I don't know why you failed during your first reincarnation tens of thousands of years ago, it is obvious that you're not confident this time either. Otherwise, why would you have taken interested in me midway? What you're interested isn't my stop spell, but this. In Wang Lin's right hand, the karma whip flickered in and out of existence. Li Yuan's eyes revealed a mysterious light as he stared at the karma whip in Wang Lin's hand and slowly said, "You are very smart. Yes, what I want is the whip containing the power of the reincarnation cycle and karma domain. Without it, I'm only 70% confident, but with it I'm 90% confident." With that, his right hand pointed at Wang Lin. The black line connected at both ends to form a circle and flew straight at Wang Lin. Wang Lin quickly retreated, but he didn't panic at all. A majority of his previous actions were all to confirm his final speculation. Once he confirmed the last speculation, he became 100% confident in leaving this place. He was finally able to confirm his speculation when he heard Li Yuan's answer about the karma whip. The black line closed in and Wang Lin retreated even faster. Since you failed during your first reincarnation tens of thousands of years ago, then you still won't succeed during your second reincarnation. All of this is because your own master is unwilling. Shut up. This was the first time Li Yuan's emotions had fluctuated so violently, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He rushed out and waved his right hand, causing 3 more black lines to appear in his palm. The 3 lines formed 3 swords that shot toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin let out a laugh and a ray of white light shot out from his mouth. The light turned into a screen that contained the mountain and river screen, revealing its majesty. This was the first time Wang Lin had used this mountain and river screen. Even if Li Yuan had seen his battle against the illusory yin cultivator, it would be impossible for him to know he had this. The moment the mountain and river screen appeared, the mountain and river painting appeared around Wang Lin. The current Wang Lin was like someone inside the painting. The black lines immediately entered the mountain and river screen and became dots in the painting that slowly moved toward Wang Lin. Tens of thousands of years ago, you also came here with these 3 treasures like today, and also came with someone of the GE family. The reason you didn't succeed back then was because even your master wasn't willing to awaken using such a method. As a servant to your master, you really not wrong. Wang Lin's voice came out from the mountain and river. His voice carried the might of thunder and echoed across the world. This voice was so loud that the rumbling words echoed inside Li Yuan's ears. Li Yuan's body trembled and the struggle appeared once more on his face. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. With a point of his finger, the Karma whip appeared once more and whipped toward Li Yuan. Wang Lin's eyes shined as he shouted, "Look back at your master's statue. What is that under your master's eyes?" The Karma whip pierced through space and landed on Li Yuan, causing his body to tremble. However, there seemed to be an invisible force that made him look back at his master's statue on the mountain peak. The red flame was completely absorbed by the statue the moment Li Yuan turned around. More and more cracks appeared and rays of red light shot out from the crack. The red light carried the scent of blood. This scent was from Ji Hong. These red lights seemed to contain powerful aura and spread out toward the scroll. However, at this moment, there were also many cracks under the statue's eyes. When the red light came out from those cracks, there was an illusion. It was as if the celestial statue was crying 2 streams of blood. Was I wrong? Li Yuan stared at the stone statue as he muttered to himself, and his eyes were filled with confusion. Wang Lin's eyes were cold. This Li Yuan was not dangerous. With only his peak late-stage ascendant cultivation, Wang Lin could easily win. However, there was a powerful aura coming from inside Li Yuan's body, and the source of this was the slave imprint. It was because of this aura that this person always gave off a mysterious aura. Wang Lin was very wary of that power. He first noticed it when Li Yuan was explaining everything under the stone statue. That moment where Li Yuan convulsed and was soaked in sweat had a very different meaning in Wang Lin's eyes. At that moment, Wang Lin only kept this in mind. It wasn't until Ji Hong's gaze at the stone statue before death that Wang Lin felt like a bolt of lightning had struck him and he suddenly gained enlightenment. The Ji family was the descendants of the Celestial. As for the Li family, perhaps they really were innocent. It was all because their ancestors had boldly entered this place and received the slave imprint that caused the entire family to decline. Generations of the family contributed their cultivation and lifespans to slowly allow this indestructible celestial soul to recover. The Li family may have really wanted to rebel, but it was obvious that it had failed every time. It wasn't until the Li family ancestor from tens of thousands of years ago did the Li family had a chance. However, the slave imprint that had nourished its master for tens of thousands of years had gathered enough for the soul hidden inside it to awaken. This was how the talented Li family ancestor appeared. As a result, when the Li ancestor said that he was releasing the Li family from the slave imprint, he was, in fact, resurrecting his master. Wang Lin had really thought that the failure tens of thousands of years ago was due to some problem with the Ji family. However, it wasn't until he thought about why Li Yuan had to find him that he came to a different conclusion. Li Yuan's preparations were most likely very complete, and he couldn't have planned on meeting him before entering the celestial realm. When Wang Lin saw the stone statue and understood the karma between the Li and Ji family, he suddenly understood. It was because Li Yuan had seen the karma whip when he used in the battle against the illusory yin cultivator. This was why Li Yuan chose him. The karma whip affected karma. The failure tens of thousands of years ago was not because of the servant, the treasures, or the GE family. It was because the Celestial was unwilling to be revived this way. The Celestial was unwilling to pay the price of the life of all his descendants to release the sealed soul. It can be imagined that Ge Hong's blood was not enough for the resurrection of a Celestial. It was likely that outside the Celestial realm, the Ge family was carrying out some kind of sacrifice with death as the price. The karmic cause was the resurrection of the Celestial statue. The karmic effect was the removal of the Celestial soul resistance. But how could the soul of a Celestial be so simple? If Wang Lin were to use the karma whip, he himself would have been dragged into it, and even he didn't know if he would survive. If Wang Lin hadn't appeared, Li Yuan would have still used other methods after the failure from the first time. However, even Li Yuan wasn't sure if these methods would succeed, which was why he said he was 70% confident and 90% if he had the karma whip. Wang Lin boldly speculated that this Li Yuan also had a karma-related treasure inside his bag. This would explain why after failing tens of thousands of years ago, the Ge family used various methods to retain the three treasures. Instead of hiding them, they made the whole clan aware of the situation. Their goal was to wait for the second reincarnation of the slave imprint in the Li family. This was why everything had gone so smoothly when Li Yuan went to the Ge family. However, Wang Lin remembered the way Li Yuan treated Ge Hong along the way. After constantly watching their interaction, it was as if Li Yuan was constantly changing personalities. Adding on the change that happened to Li Yuan under the stone statue, Wang Lin confirmed his own speculation. Li Yuan's real soul hadn't died and still existed. To be more accurate, there was exactly one soul inside Li Yuan's body, but this soul had two different sides. One was the true Li Yuan and the other was the remnant soul inside the slave imprint. The conflict between the two made it so Li Yuan couldn't use the full power of his family's restrictions. Every time Li Yuan used a restriction, it would show signs of collapse. The 18-plum restriction was like this, and the black lines formed by the annihilation restriction was also like this. After understanding all of this, Wang Lin stayed inside the mountain and river painting and silently stared at Li Yuan. He felt that this Li Yuan was somewhat pitiful. He was such a loyal servant that he was willing to do whatever it took in order for his master to revive. Just like the image he saw through the illusion from the statue. When the master died, the servant standing at the tip of the sword looked back with vacant and sad eyes. The master on the sword hilt was no longer there. It was as if he was the only one left in this world as stood on the sword tip. Countless years of waiting and 2 attempts at resurrection, but ultimately he was still unable to escape. Li Yuan stared at the statue and knelt on the ground. Master. Am I really wrong? More and more cracks appeared on the statue at this moment. As the cracks spread, the red light became even more intense. The red light under the statue's eyes gathered together as if they were real tears of blood. Why aren't you willing to wake up? I just want the sword hilt to no longer be empty. The master can always stand on the sword hilt and I can stand on the sword tip to help you battle the heavens and earth, Li Yuan muttered to himself, and his eyes were filled with sorrow. Wang Lin stood within the mountain and river painting as he silently watched this. He had no life and death grudge with Li Yuan. He let out a sigh and put away the karma whip. It was because of extreme paranoia that he became lost. After the first failure tens of thousands of years ago, his belief was unstable. Now that he has failed a second time, his faith has collapsed. More and more cracks appeared on the statue, even the stone sword with the servant on it was covered in cracks. Red light came from within the cracks and colored half the sky. The stone released even more red light until it slowly extended outward and was absorbed by the scroll. At the beginning, the scroll didn't absorb much red light. However, as the statue released more and more red light, the scroll began to absorb the red light from the statue even faster. In the end, the red lights seemed to link together and were rapidly pulled out from the statue. This scene caused the stunned Li Yuan to expose excitement in his eyes. Master! More and more red light appeared, but none of it leaked out and it was all absorbed by the scroll. The red light from the statue gradually dimmed as if all of it were released by the statue. Finally, when the last ray of red light came out from the stone statue and into the scroll, the entire statue trembled. It was as if it had lost its soul and no longer had any intelligence. It now looked very ordinary. The scroll that had absorbed all the red light emitted a bright light. A flame appeared at the corner of the scroll and slowly grew larger. The scroll began to burn from the edge. It wasn't just one edge, but all the edges of the scroll began burning at once. Green smoke came out from the burning scroll and didn't dissipate. As Li Yuan looked at this scene, the excitement in his eyes became even more intense. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed and he carefully observed. The burning of the scroll slowly moved toward the center form the edges. The celestial on the sword hilt seemed to possess a soul at this moment and flickered inside the burning scroll. In the end, the flame covered the entire scroll and soon the scroll became a pile of dust that was blown away by the wind. The green smoke formed by the burning scroll wasn't blown away by the wind but floated in the air. It then vaguely took the shape of a person. This person's figure was extremely blurry and his appearance couldn't be clearly seen. However, Wang Lin clearly saw a sword formed by the green smoke under the person's feet, and this person was standing on the sword hilt. There was some smoke swaying near the sword hilt. It was difficult to see if it was the sword's tassel or just green smoke. The person standing on the sword hilt rose into the air and waved his hand gently, summoning Li Yuan. Li Yuan, who was standing on the ground, immediately trembled. A complex rune appeared on Li Yuan's forehead. This was the slave imprint. As the imprint flickered, the remnant soul inside the slave imprint flew out into the sky and landed on the tip of the sword. The green smoke charged into the sky and disappeared without a trace. All of this seemed like an illusion. The real and unreal seemed to not exist and everything was but a dream. Wang Lin's expression was a bit confused as he looked at the statue that had lost its spirit. Then his gaze fell on the seal on its right hand and he fell into a trance. It was still the same ancient celestial realm, still the celestial sword flying into the sky, and still the same two people on the sword. However, the difference this time was the sound that came from the celestial before he died. "I'm dead, my soul extinguished." The statue collapsed into countless pieces of stone. It was now just a pile of debris. Did the celestial die back then and all of this was a lonely dream formed by the remnant soul of the servant? Or was it really what Wang Lin had guessed before? There were some questions that Wang Lin wouldn't be able to get satisfactory explanations for. There was no answer. Just like how there was no way to tell if the green smoke was real or fake. Wang Lin thought that he knew everything, but when he saw the green smoke, everything felt fake. Perhaps only the servant's remnant soul was real, the only one that knew all the answers. From this day onward, there was an extra sword made of green smoke in the Thunder Celestial realm. There was a figure that stood at the tip as if it would last for eternity. "Where is this?" a weak voice came from Li Yuan's mouth as he lied on the ground. He looked around until his gaze finally fell on Wang Lin. There were many celestial caves scattered across the numerous fragments of the Thunder Celestial realm along with the treasures of their previous masters. These places were also filled with countless restrictions. It was not simple to enter the dwellings of Celestials. Despite the fact that the Thunder Celestial realm had opened countless times over the years, there were still places with restrictions not broken. These restrictions were often too powerful, and sometimes there were places that cultivators shouldn't touch. In an area filled with debris, Li Yuan squatted down, touched the earth, and said, "Brother Shu, look here." This is a typical use of the fourth law of the 8 laws of celestial restrictions. What it focuses on is causing disorder in the surrounding celestial spiritual energy in order to hide from divine sense. If I'm not mistaken, once this restriction is broken, the cave of a celestial should be revealed here. Beside him, Wang Lin looked attentively and nodded. Brother Li means that the restriction here is primarily made of this soil? The fragment they were on wasn't very big. Looking at it from afar, the earth was black and the sky was dark. There wasn't any thunder here, but one could hear the muffled sounds of thunder. There wasn't anyone within tens of thousands of kilometers of these two. These two figures looked quite desolate here. Li Yuan nodded and smiled. "I admire Brother Shu's understanding of restrictions. In this past month, most of the times I said something, you were able to see the key points. Li Yuan grabbed a handful of dirt and put it inside his bag of holding. He then said, Brother Li should take some of this restriction dirt as well. Once we leave the Thunder Celestial Realm, the dirt may change after leaving the Celestial Realm environment. If that is really the case, then once we return to the Li family, it will be a good material for making the restriction compass. Many thanks, Brother Li. Wang Lin smiled slightly as he squatted down and grabbed a handful of dirt. Li Yuan was very emotional as he sincerely said, it should be me who is thanking you. If not for you, I would have already died, and let's not mention you freeing me from the slave imprint. He became sober 1 month ago. After the initial confusion, his memories slowly emerged inside his mind. In particular, the various acts he committed while under the control of the slave imprint made it difficult for him to calm down. After understanding everything, he was very grateful toward Wang Lin. He shared his study of restrictions without any hesitation with Wang Lin to express his gratitude. Once we return to the Li family, I'll take Brother Shu to the Ancestral Inheritance Temple. Once there, I can pay respects to the ancestors and then teach you the annihilation restriction to repay our debt. As Li Yuan looked at Wang Lin, his eyes were crystal clear. Wang Lin backed up a few steps and clasped his hands at Li Yuan. Although Wang Lin didn't speak, his eyes showed the gravity of it all. The annihilation restriction was one of the 4 great restrictions, and over the last month, Li Yuan had explained a lot of it to him. This restriction was a lot like a spell, and although it wasn't a celestial spell, it was comparable to one. In order to learn this restriction, one must learn it at a place of inheritance. In this world, the Li family was the only place left. Unfortunately, the restriction here isn't complete. It must have been broken by someone many years ago, but the method they used to break it is extremely crude. Li Yuan looked at the earth and pondered a bit. He pointed between his eyebrows and a black line flew out. Then his hand immediately formed a seal and he pressed the seal down on the earth along with his finger. Break. With one word, the earth seemed to shake. With Li Yuan's index finger as the center, the earth trembled and suddenly the restrictions broken layer by layer. What appeared before Wang Lin was a celestial mountain and a beautiful pavilion. This mountain wasn't very tall and there was also a magnificent palace on its side. However, the mountain was filled with holes, as if there had been countless celestial plants there that were taken away. The only plants remaining were some very ordinary-looking trees that swayed in the wind. The palace was also in ruin, it merely looked dignified. It is indeed as I suspected. Li Yuan bitterly smiled and looked back at Wang Lin. Wang Lin faintly smiled and said, Brother Li's restriction is really amazing. In the last month, you were able to see through restrictions right away. Although most of the time someone else had been there before, as time goes on, perhaps we will really find a complete celestial palace. Each of the 4 ancient restrictions will have powerful spells when cultivated to the peak. Whether it is the celestials, or the demons high above, or the mortal beasts below, they can all be sealed. The 18-plum restriction is something derived from the annihilation restriction. However, it was spread outside, and that's how the world outside found out about it. As Li Yuan spoke, he was filled with confidence. Wang Lin looked at Li Yuan and said, with how powerful the annihilation restriction is, there must be a lot of people seeking it in the all-heaven star system. Li Yuan wryly smiled and nodded. I don't want to lie to Brother Shu. Over the countless years that the Li family suffered under the slave imprint, the annihilation restriction has been taught outside the family 7 times. Every time was because it was the last resort. But Li Yuan looked at Wang Lin and slowly said, what they learned was indeed the annihilation restriction. The Li family didn't hide anything from them and even let them comprehend it at the Inheritance Temple. However, without the restriction heart, it can't be considered the real annihilation restriction. The restriction heart is something only the head of each generation can inherit. After we leave the Thunder Celestial Realm, I'll go to the Ancestral Temple and permanently give you half of the restriction heart. Wang Lin was silent for a moment and then clasped his hands at Li Yuan once more. Li Yuan quickly waved his hand. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly exclaimed and stared at the palace on the mountain. "Brother Shu, look over there." Wang Lin raised his head and looked at the palace. The dilapidated palace looked normal, but after staring at it for a long time, he seemed to have found some clues. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he slowly said, "The tree behind the palace. This whole time, only the left side has moved, while the right side didn't move at all." Li Yuan's eyes revealed shock and he nodded. "Although Brother Shu hasn't learned the annihilation restriction, just your observation skills are enough to surpass many restriction masters." Wang Lin smiled and said, "It looks like our luck is pretty good." Li Yuan laughed and flew toward the mountain with Wang Lin. They soon arrived next to the palace. Wang Lin immediately noticed a gloomy aura coming from the motionless half of the tree. This gloomy aura gave off a sense of danger. Wang Lin stopped and Li Yuan stopped almost at the exact same time. Under the tree, there were two white skeletons, and one of them was wearing leather armor. This armor was very rough and had some natural cracks. At the moment Wang Lin saw the armor, his eyes suddenly widened, revealing a rare look of disbelief. This video will end here.